I need you to stop whatever you are doing, not pause, stop. Because what I am about to tell you is something that nobody in your life has had the courage to say to you directly. Not your parents, not your friends, not your teachers, not anyone who loves you, nobody. And the reason nobody has said it is not because they do not care. It is because saying this out loud requires a level of honesty that most people are simply too afraid of. But I am going to say it right now, directly to you. You are wasting your potential. Not because you are lazy, not because you are stupid, not because you lack talent, but because you have become dangerously comfortable with a version of yourself that was never meant to be permanent. In the next 15 minutes, you are going to feel something shift inside you. A discomfort, a recognition, a quiet voice in the back of your mind that has been trying to reach you for a very long time. And today, for the first time, you are going to hear it clearly. But before we go deeper, I need you to answer one question. Honestly, not to me, to yourself. When was the last time you did something that genuinely terrified you? Not a horror movie, not a roller coaster, something real, something that mattered deeply, something where failure was completely possible and you moved forward anyway. Something that kept you awake at night, not from worry, but from the electric, terrifying excitement of being fully alive. Think carefully, take your time. If that memory is recent, this video will sharpen you into something sharper. If that memory is distant, this video was built for you. And if you cannot remember at all, if you are sitting there right now, searching your recent memory and coming back empty, then what comes next is not just important for you. It is urgent. Because here is what is happening right now, not in theory, not to someone else, somewhere else, to you. Specifically, you are capable of something far beyond what your current daily life reflects. That capability is not gone. It has not disappeared. It has not been taken from you. It is sitting inside you right now as you watch this, being quietly wasted one ordinary day at a time. And the most terrifying part of all, y'all, is not the wasting itself. It is that you have grown so accustomed to it that it no longer feels like waste. It simply feels like life. That feeling, that quiet numbness, that slow acceptance of ordinary is not peace. It is not maturity. It is not wisdom. It is the most dangerous place a human being can exist. And right now, you are living there. Stay with me, because what comes next goes even deeper. Let me show you exactly what silent potential waste looks like, because here is what makes it so dangerous. It does not look like failure. That is the trap. That is why most people never catch it. It does not look like rock bottom. It does not look like a breakdown. It does not announce itself loudly. It does not arrive dramatically. It looks like a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. It looks like waking up, not excited, but not devastated either. Just neutral. Getting through the morning. Doing what is expected of you. Saying what is safe to say. Choosing what is comfortable to choose. Consuming content that someone else had the courage to create, instead of creating something yourself. Scrolling through lives that look exactly like what your life could be, and feeling that familiar, quiet sting that you have learned to suppress very quickly because sitting with it fully is simply too uncomfortable. So you scroll a little more, and the sting fades, and you sleep, and you wake up, and it is another Tuesday, and another, and another. This is what wasted potential looks like. Not dramatic, not loud, just a slow, quiet daily erosion of who you were supposed to become. Now here is a psychological fact that is going to disturb you. The human brain has a built-in mechanism called hedonic adaptation. It means this: your brain adjusts completely to whatever your normal becomes. Give your brain extraordinary challenge. It becomes the new normal. Give your brain daily growth. It becomes the new normal. Give your brain mediocrity. It becomes the new normal. Your brain does not judge what it adapts to. It simply adapts. And what this means for your life is deeply unsettling. The longer you remain in a life that sits below your actual potential, the more your brain quietly accepts that life is simply just how things are. Your standards lower without you noticing. Your dreams shrink without announcement. Your vision of what is genuinely possible for you quietly narrows year by year, disguised as growing up, disguised as being realistic, disguised as finally understanding how the world works. I want you to think about who you were at 15 or 16 years old, what you believed was truly possible, what you were going to do with your life, who you were absolutely certain you would become, the size of what you believed in back then, the complete absence of doubt, that unreasonable, almost reckless belief in yourself. Now look honestly at today, not with judgment, with pure honesty. How much of that person still exists inside you? How much of that fire is still burning? If the honest answer to that question makes you uncomfortable right now, do not look away from it. Hold it. Sit inside that discomfort, because that feeling is the most alive you have felt in a very long time, and it is trying to tell you something that you have been avoiding hearing for far too long. In 1943, a psychologist named Abraham Maslow introduced a concept that would go on to become one of the most studied ideas in the entire history of human psychology. He called it the hierarchy of needs, a pyramid. At the bottom, the basics: food, water, shelter, safety. In the middle, belonging, love, connection, esteem. And at the very top, up, sitting above everything else, above comfort, above approval, above security, was a single concept, a single word: self-actualization. Maslow defined self-actualization as becoming everything you are genuinely capable of becoming. Not a portion of it, not a comfortable version of it. Everything, the fullest possible expression of your potential, realized completely. And he did not frame this as luxury. He did not frame it as ambition. He framed it as a fundamental human need, as real and as urgent as hunger, as real and as urgent as thirst. And then Maslow said something that very few people ever hear, something that has stayed with psychologists for over 80 years. He said the vast majority of human beings will never reach self-actualization, not because they are incapable, not because they lack the raw material, but because the needs below it, comfort, belonging, approval, safety, are just enough to stop them from ever climbing higher. Read that again slowly. Comfort, belonging, approval, safety. These are not villains. These are deeply human needs. But when they become your ceiling instead of your floor, when you stop there and call it enough, they become the very walls of a prison. You designed yourself, decorated yourself, and chose to call home. Right now, something in your life is giving you just enough comfort to remove the desperation, just enough approval to silence the doubt, just enough safety to kill the urgency, and that just enough is quietly costing you everything, because potential does not wait patiently. It does not sit in a corner reading a book until you are finally ready. Potential has something far more terrifying than a deadline. It has an expiry. And the expiry of potential is not death. It arrives much earlier than that. The expiry of potential is the precise moment you stop genuinely believing. It exists inside you. And that moment, for most people, arrives quietly, somewhere in their 30s, wearing the face of maturity, wearing the clothes of realism, holding the hand of acceptance. And it looks completely reasonable from the outside, but inside it is surrender. You still have time. But time is the one resource that sounds completely infinite until one single day, without warning, it is not. So let me be completely direct with you now. No more psychology, no more science, no more buffer, just truth. You know what you are supposed to be doing. You already know, not roughly, not vaguely, specifically. There is something sitting quietly in the back of your mind right now as you watch this that you have been postponing, negotiating with, building careful excuses around for longer than you are comfortable admitting. A skill you have not developed, a project you have not started, a version of yourself you have been meaning to become since longer than you remember. And every single morning it is there, waiting, patient, and every single morning, something smaller wins. The phone, the comfort, the familiar routine, the path of least resistance, the safe and acceptable choice. I want you to understand something about that thing you keep postponing. It is not waiting for you to feel ready, because readiness is a myth. Nobody who ever built anything real felt ready when they started. Nobody who ever changed their life waited until the fear was gone. Nobody who ever became who they were capable of becoming did it from a place of complete comfort and certainty. They felt the fear. They felt the doubt. They felt completely unprepared. And they moved anyway. The gap between who you are today and who you are genuinely capable of becoming is not closed by more preparation. It is not closed by more research. It is not closed by waiting for the perfect moment that will never arrive. It is closed by action, imperfect action, uncomfortable action, taken before you feel ready, repeated daily, stubbornly, quietly, without waiting for permission from anyone. The uncomfortable truth of this entire video is not that you are failing. The uncomfortable truth is that you are capable of extraordinary things, and you are choosing every single day not to access them. That is a choice. Staying comfortable is a choice. Inaction is a choice. And every choice has a consequence that compounds silently over years until one day it becomes your entire life. 20 years from now, you will look back at this moment, this age, this period of your life, this version of yourself sitting here right now. And one of two things will be true. Either you will look back and say, that was the moment I stopped waiting. That was when I finally chose myself. That was when everything began to change. Or you will look back with that quiet, devastating shriek of someone who had everything they needed, every tool, every ability, every opportunity, and chose comfort instead. That grief has a name. It is not the regret of what you did. It is the regret of who you never became. And it is the heaviest thing a human being can carry for the rest of their life. This video made you uncomfortable. Good. That discomfort is not something to escape. That discomfort is a signal. It is the distance between where you are and where you know deep down you are supposed to be. The only question that remains is simple. What are you going to do with the next 24 hours? Not the next year, not next Monday, the next 24 hours. Because that is where your potential either takes its first breath or quietly done one more day. The choice has always been yours. It still is, right now.